And good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of What's Your Issue? Geeks with Wives Radio's. That's a tough word to say, isn't it? Geeks with Wives Radio's weekly show about single issues that shipped the preceding week. So this evening we'll be talking about comic books that shipped the shipping week of 15 July. Of course, comics always ship on Wednesday here in the U.S. So we have a little bit of a change up in the cast tonight, and it will probably be a pretty short show because we had a couple guys who had other things going on and are not with us here tonight. But we do have my main man, entertainment editor at Geeks with Wives, host of Geeks on Screen, the one and only Mr. Everett Harn. How you doing, Ed?
Yo, what's up, guys, please? Boom! Someone's got to do it on the show, right?
Yeah, I always forget to do it when I'm hosting. So
that's good.
Thanks for bringing it back and keeping it real.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with you.
So,
it's been a while since I was on the 100th Capes cast, but it's been a while since I've actually taught comics. I didn't talk comics on that podcast.
Right. Right. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah. So this is Everett's first time sitting in on this. Although this show, in terms of its concept and getting it kicked off, was Everett was definitely part of the brainchild behind that. So this he and I just kind of started up a chat one day talking about wanting to spend a little more time talking about comics. Yeah, comics is such a big topic, right? You've got you got cosplay involved in there. It touches on gaming. It definitely touches huge on movies and television shows. It's just gotten bigger, which is why you see that kind of reflected in what you see going on at Comic Cons. So, so we just wanted to show that kind of, I don't want to say got back to, but just also offered,
a little more comic talk than the Capes was able to provide, given the amazing guests they've been having on. Because, when you get such just an interesting and well-informed guest, and they have a real good origin story, and you just get to talking sooner than later, or before you know it, it's an hour and a half past, and we haven't talked about comics, so we can't really get to any of them. And it kind of came up like, I would get on the Casey. I think it was when Old Man Logan #1 came out. I was like really hoping to hear what people had thought about that book. And so I listened to the Capes podcast and they didn't even mention it. And I was like, Casey, what the hell? So yeah, that's kind of where this podcast is supposed to come in now.
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We're just trying and cover all the bases of all the various content that we have. So I'm having a little problem here getting the cameras to switch. So sometime before you came in, something goofy went on with the cameras. So I'm trying to get that corrected. And I don't know if I can.
Oh, well. You can just switch it manually every once in a while.
Yeah. I think I got it.
Okay.
I hope I do. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I deactivated the cameraman, apparently.
Oh, okay.
So tonight, like I said, it's just Everett and I, and I will be the first one to admit my mea culpa. So I did not complete my stack this week. I had 6 books to read, and actually, I had 6 books to read, and I only got through about 3 of them, unfortunately, juggling stuff for the move. So I wound up reading a couple books from DC and one of the 2 books I had from Marvel. The big one I didn't get around to is I have not had a chance to read Secret Wars Battle World #3 yet.
Oh.
Is that a series you're keeping up with?
Well, the problem is, and I was going to mention this, is that for the past, I think 4, maybe even 5 weeks, I've been in wedding and honeymoon mode. So I think the last Secret Wars main book I've read was #3. And so I'm quite behind. I don't even think I've read Battle World #1 yet. So I need to like really go through my pulls and just catch up big time. But you know, I've been still reading some of the off branch books that don't, you know, they don't have a whole lot to do with the main stuff. So
Right.
So yeah, I'm not keeping up with Battle World.
Okay. And that's cool because I am not keeping up on the main series. I mean, right now I don't know how the rest of the comic book fandom is being impacted, but my pull list is just all shot to hell right now.
Right.
Every book that was on my pull list ended, and then all this stuff restarted, and I wasn't really tracking what was restarting. So I'm just kind of chunking books in at random. But I think I've read one issue of Secret Wars, and this might be my first issue of Battle World that I'm reading. So
I think I was like Brad when Secret Wars was about to start. I was like, all right, I'm going to buy every Secret Wars book. I'm going to read every Secret Wars book. I'm going to be like on top of it. But yeah, no, it's not happening.
Yeah, I don't know who has the money to make the financial commitment
Yeah.
doing that. So we're going to go ahead and trundle through the rundown in this episode of what's your issue, and it'll just be what it is, and we'll talk about a few books, and then maybe next week we'll have the full cast back together. So Everett, you read a book from one of my personal favorite publishers, Zenoscope Entertainment, who is kind of on that tier of publishers that I put with like Boom Entertainment and Dynamite. They're a small outfit. They typically do, their big claim to fame is that they do the grim fairy tale stuff.
I think their biggest claim to fame their biggest claim to fame is the giant boobs on all their comics.
Yeah, especially on the covers. And despite that, the books are actually pretty good. They have that in there, but that's not all that they're about. The stories are very tight, and I really like them as a publisher.
All you got to read is Robin Hood, and you appreciate like what they do with the classic fairy tales and how they change them and stuff like that.
Right.
They do some good work at Zenoscope.
Which is why the age of digital to me is so awesome, because now I don't have to deal with and when I had a comic book shop here, I was definitely supporting them. I'd go there, and that's where I bought all my books from, and I would just get a couple things digital. That store since closed up, but. So I've had the freedom to go all digital, but the awesome thing is that, I no longer have the constraints of, this comic book store doesn't carry Zenoscope, or it doesn't carry, these books. I just have the entire warehouse of comics at my fingertips. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the other, well, I shouldn't say the other licensed property, because the great thing about Grim Fairy Tales is it's public domain. So there's no license, so they can write whatever they want. But you read a new book with a licensed property.
Yeah, and it's a book that you might actually be interested in, because we've been talking a lot of Walking Dead, but it's a book called Aliens versus Zombies, and it's the first issue of a 5-part miniseries that they're doing. It's written by Joe Bruscia and Ralph Tedesco, and it's written, or the artwork, is by Vincenzo Riccardi. And the artwork's actually pretty good, but the story basically, it's, you hear aliens versus zombies and that they're going to be fighting in some form, but the whole thing, like, it starts off showing just gruesome, horrible, Walking Dead city style, just zombies in the middle of the street eating people. News reporters are getting eaten. But the twist on that is that the zombie virus is almost kind of like it's almost like a parasite that came from space, instead of a just virus, a plague. I think it's a parasite, because they show this giant green egg in the middle of the field, and it starts infecting farmers, and those farmers go out and start biting people. And the twist on the story, on the zombie story, is that there's some aliens that are tracking this parasite, because apparently this parasite has infected dozens and dozens and dozens of populated worlds.
So let me ask you. So I may have made an error on this. So I made the assumption when I saw the title "Aliens versus Zombies" that this was the 20th Century Fox IP aliens? Is it those aliens, or is it just
No,
it's
it's just aliens. Just
okay, gotcha.
people from outer space. Yeah. I was actually hoping it was xenomorphs, but it's not.
Okay, all right.
But then again, if you try to imagine xenomorphs like in a zombified apocalypse, I feel like there wouldn't be much story. It would just be people eating each other. Or zombie aliens, that'd be cool. But no, it's about kind of a hyper intellectual alien group flying in like an upside down USS Enterprise looking ship, tracking this parasite, the zombie parasite called the Z virus. They tracked it, or they followed it to Earth, and the captain is named Captain Nova, and she's, I don't know, she's pretty cool looking. She's purple. But, they show a few human scenes. They show like the president, and the president, he's just like, screw humanity. It's too late. Burn the place down. And, he scrambles the fighters to go and like bomb New York City or wherever it is. And they're heading out as the aliens come in, Captain Nova and her crew, and they kind of wreck into Captain Nova's ship as she's dispersing these little balls that apparently will help destroy the virus. But since one of the members on the Air Force plane gets zombified and starts eating everyone in that plane, the plane crashes into the Captain Nova, and the comic ends with the aliens emerging from their ship in the middle of New York City that's full of zombies.
Yeah. So how do you think this, I don't want to say stacks up, but how do you have the audacity, if I can put it that way, to do a zombie comic in this day and age of The Walking Dead with its huge popularity?
I feel like since it's only a 5-part series, they don't have that pressure on them. Like, they don't have the pressure of a long, drawn-out, kind of full of emotion story. Like, this is just supposed to be kind of like the way I originally thought it was going to be, and the reason I asked Casey to send it over to me was because, I just thought, well, that sounds kind of fun. And that's kind of, I think, all it's going to be, is it's just going to be fun sci-fi.
Was it a little campy?
No, it actually was very serious. Like,
okay.
It doesn't have like hardly any jokes at all. Like, it's, but then again, there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue. It was a lot of like filling in on the situation on Earth, and then introducing us to Captain Nova and crew, and, getting a little backstory of their mission to try and destroy this Z virus or whatever. And issue 2's cover, in true Zenescope fashion, has a girl with quite large breasts on the front. And she kind of has like a Laura Croft outfit on. She's holding alien weapons and a katana in one hand, and an alien blaster in the other. And I feel like maybe when she joins the crew, joins the fight, which she wasn't in the first issue, maybe it'll get a little campier, or maybe she'll joke around, or I don't know. But it was a very serious comic, but it was pretty fun. I liked it a lot. And the art was really good.
So I'm sorry, I'm having problems. My dog.
Oh, you're fine.
He's insisting on getting in on the show. Up.
Yeah, luckily my dog's asleep.
You want to be in the show? Get in the camera.
They had cool alien designs, though.
Cool. So creature art pretty good in it, you think?
Yeah, pretty good. The zombies were pretty gross. The aliens were pretty unique. There was like a praying mantis zombie, and that's not super normal or super, original. But some of the other ones, they looked like, I don't know. I haven't seen many of those before.
Right. So after that, you kind of, like I did for maybe about half of my pull this week, you kind of marveled it up, right?
Yeah. Besides my one image comic that I made sure to read, I pretty much went all Marvel, which, everyone that listens to the Capes podcast that's seen me before knows that. I was Geeks with Wives' sole comic Marvel reviewer for about a year. I was the only one that got Marvel books.
Oh, really? I guess
Yeah.
until I joined up, I guess.
Yeah. Until you and Brad and a few of the other guys joined up, I was the only one that put up Marvel books. So shouldn't be a surprise. And I picked up Korvac Saga, which also shouldn't be a surprise because I just interviewed Dan Abnett. And Korvac Saga is the continuation of my absolute favorite book of the year, which was Guardians 3000, which is the original Guardians of the Galaxy team, not the one from the movies.
Was it? I thought Guardians 3000.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's Vance Astro and Martin X and Charlie 2-4 and all that, or 2-3, all that stuff.
Right. And I read the first issue of Guardians 3000, and like you know, those, and I don't know exactly how the whole history goes, but I just know that there were a lot of those characters that I was familiar with, and I want to say that to me they were my Guardians of the Galaxy. So when I wasn't,
they should be.
What's that?
They should be, because you know you're a little older than I am, and the Guardians that you know from the movies didn't come around until maybe the 90s, I want to say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the Guardians 3000 team were the original Guardians of the Galaxy that were probably in the 70s, maybe even earlier than that.
Okay.
And so they would have been your Guardians until like the ones from the movies came out with Dan Abnett and all them there.
So before you go through the setup for Korvac Saga, let me ask you, because this is one that threw me. You know, I saw it in your pull list, you know, that we post in preps for the weekly show, and had no idea what Korvac Saga was. So what are, you know, Brad Bell? This is something, you know, the other comics editor Brad Bell and I talk about frequently. Is, you know, Marvel and DC have their own different ways of handling events, and you know, for Convergence, the way DC handled tie-ins was they had, you know, they did tie-ins with lots of familiar characters, many of which did not get their own books in the New 52, right? So, which is one of the things I loved. Like you know, one of the number ones that appeared, you know, I'm a big fan of the number ones that kind of launched when I first got into comics in the mid 80s. So, you know, I'm a big fan of the Ted Kord Blue Beetle, because that comic booted. You know, I'm a big fan of Booster Gold. So it was awesome to see, you know, a Blue Beetle title, right, in the Convergence tie-ins, and you know, some of those other things. Now, but the difference with those books is, and the whole thing I'm getting around to, is DC's approach with the Convergence tie-ins was to use books with very familiar names and titles, but then when you went to read the books, they were frequently different variants of those characters, right? Marvel's approach is to use unfamiliar titles, and some of these characters are different variants. Sometimes they're I guess what I think of as the 616 variants. I'm not always sure, but I guess what's your feeling on kind of their branding and approach with a bunch of books that, to me, you really have to have a mapping. Like you need to have this little spreadsheet in your head of, oh, Ghost Rider is now Ghost Racers, and Hulk, I guess Hulk is now Planet Hulk. So if there were books that you had in your pull list from the current Marvel continuity, those books theoretically map to the Secret Wars Battle Worlds tie-ins that are of different titles.
I kind of feel like people shouldn't care too much about it. Like, you know, I mean, there's going to be people that want to do the maps, so they want to, you know, have a spreadsheet of which characters are which. But I feel like Marvel's just like, you know, we're just going to throw everything in a giant bucket, and whether you know who these Ghost Racers, these different Ghost Riders are, you're going to learn from this book.
Okay, that's not good.
Because in like another book I read this week, I won't talk too much about it, yet had She-Hulk in it. And She-Hulk is apparently one of the Thors. She didn't look like a Thor, but she is a Thor. But is she a Thor in the A-Force books or in the other books that she's in? Like, I'm not really sure.
I don't think so. I don't think she's ever been. This whole thing of like the Thor Corps.
Yeah.
Is they're just, again, free license. They're just, it's not continuity, so they can do whatever.
Right, and that's kind of how I feel like, if I'm a fan of She-Hulk, I wouldn't have known she would have been in the book I read this week, but she was, because I thought, she's in A-Force or whatever, but no, she was in this book, so I was just like, oh, okay, whatever, it's cool. But I feel like what she does, like, in this book's not going to impact the other books.
Right.
So I feel like if people are worrying too much, they should stop. Like, I think Marvel's just trying to put out a lot of good stories that will get new readers into like the new characters that they're creating, like the new versions of that they're creating, but they're also rehashing the old stories and the old characters for older fans, like in Korvac Saga. Michael Korvac, that was a book from 1991, and I think the character's even older, I think maybe from 70s, but the original Korvac Saga was from 91, and people my age weren't reading that back then. I was 4 years old whenever that book came out, but I have read that since. But it's they're trying to mix it up to where their older viewers and their younger viewers get a little bit out, but I don't think they're trying to get everyone to be just 100% pleased with everything. I don't know. It sounds kind of weird.
No, that's cool. So tell me the dealio on Korvac Saga. What was the creative team on this one, and how did the story go, and what were your general feelings about it, art and story wise?
Story wise, obviously fantastic because it's Dan Abnett. He's my favorite comic book writer. The art is by Otto Schmidt, and the colors by Chris Peter, and it's the art I feel like isn't as good as Guardians 3000 was. It's a little different. It's got some of the fan favorites like Wonder Man, and it's got who else does it have? It's got Moondragon in it. It's got Vision in it. But it's also got, the Guardians 3000 team, and they're pretty easy to draw. I think they're all like pretty original designs, and it's hard to get them wrong. Like Vance Astor is just a more badass version of Captain America. And it's got Hercules and stuff, and Marvel, and I think whenever you take characters that are just so well known, it's hard to get them wrong. And so the art is actually pretty good. It's just not as good as Guardians 3000 team was. But
is Dan Abnett, is he the writer of the current this version of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, that was Bendis.
Okay.
But he created the one that the movie's based on, the Guardians that the movies are based on.
Okay.
And so Bendis is kind of taking Dan Abnett's work and kind of twisting it to his own style. And so Dan Abnett is taking the original Guardians and kind of
Right.
He's kind of continuing the old Guardians with Guardians 3000, and he told me in the interview that this book was unlike anything that he's written, and it's pretty true so far. There's only been 2 issues, but basically, if you didn't know, Michael Korvac in the old books was pretty much got granted a just insane cosmic power, just an insane amount. Like, he could wipe out the multiverse with a thought if he wanted to, but he was kind of psychotic. And in the end, after he wiped out everyone, he decided, he was just going to let everyone come back, and then he banished himself. And that was all you heard. That was how the Korvac Saga ended, was he reversed everything he did and then banished himself to God knows where. He just disappeared. Well, in this book, Michael Korvac is the mayors or the governor of a district of Battleworld. I'm not really sure. He's basically, he's a baron. Baron Korvac, and he is apparently, I'm trying to find the name of his place that he's in. I'm not sure. But next door to Korvac's Battleworld region is Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man, in the Holy Wood. And Simon Williams is super popular. Everybody loves him, even in Baron Korvac's area. And Korvac's, he's threatened by him because he thinks Wonder Man's going to take over his plot of land and he's going to lose it. Like, he's going to double his region. And this weird, like, they call it the star sickness, I think, but this weird thing keeps happening where people start to just go crazy and they start to ramble on about the stars and where have the stars gone? There aren't any stars anymore, and the stars aren't there. And all of a sudden these monsters start popping up, and Baron Korvac's trying to hide the fact that all this crazy, like, psychotic stuff's happening to people while Wonder Man is visiting. And pretty much the whole crux of this book was that someone close to Michael Korvac gets this disease, and she pretty much gets killed by one of Wonder Man's associates. I'll just say, I don't want to spoil too much because it's a really fun story. But basically, one of Wonder Man's associates kills someone close to Baron Korvac, and if you know who Baron Korvac is from the original Korvac saga, you know he's this incredibly powerful being. And they kind of start to tie that into this.
Okay.
It's kind of like, I feel like ever since I've been reading Guardians 3000, I feel like Guardians 3000 and the Korvac saga have been bigger books than all the other tie-ins. Like, I feel like they have way more to do with the overarching, like, feel of what's happening in Secret Wars and Battle World.
Okay.
Because I don't know, like, it's just crazy because it deals with Michael Korvac, and Michael Korvac, I feel like, is one of the only beings in the universe, even in this new universe, that could stand against the God Doom. He's that powerful, and so I feel like they're important, so I urge everyone to read them. Not just because it's Dan Abnett, not just because I freaking, it's my favorite comic book team, but I feel like there's something that's going to happen in those books that's going to be...
Like there's a bit of a setup going on in there. That's going to be the Secret Wars, okay.
I think something's going to happen at the end of Secret Wars that's going to involve what happened in these books.
I hope so. Like, and again, Brad Bell and I talked about Convergence, how there was, to a certain extent, they nullified the perspective of the potential impact that the ending of Convergence kind of really would have had on the DC universe. Like, they just kind of neutered it. There were a few things. I think at the end, the Convergence climax was okay. But it seemed like they were damn sure trying to do everything they possibly could to, like, knock its feet out from under the event. I really, and I think there was a little bit of that in Fear itself last year or a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, when this thing is winding itself up for its big climax, that it's important, it's impactful, and that it does something other than make these tie-ins just completely irrelevant.
I hope so too. And just to cap that book off, I feel like it's one of those books where you have to read both issues to get into it. It's not one of those books you can just buy Korvac Saga #1 and immediately be hooked into the story. Like, it had a good hook, but I feel like the hook at the end of #2 will get you into that book even more. So,
okay. And that is similar to the one Marvel tie-in that I read this week, Siege #1. And so, again, you kind of have to put yourself in a certain mindset to read some of these Marvel tie-ins because at the outset, they're not connected. Everything is very much federated into its own fiefdom, and then they're looking, very myopically at a specific region of Doom World. And they talk about that story, and you haven't really yet gotten to any kind of a sense of connectivity between any of those regions. in Ghost Racers number two, which Tyler Pollock and I talked about on the show last week. I think you get an initial sense of an inkling that they're going to head in that direction because Robbie Reyes, who is the character who was in the all new Ghost Rider reboot from 2014, actually escapes his realm, but we don't yet know kind of where he's wound up. So at any rate, Siege, I guess, is a repeat of an event, again, that occurred probably in the 90s, early 2000s when I wasn't into comics. And I guess that one was at least a prominent feature in that was Nick Fury. I'm not absolutely positive because I don't know that history. But at any rate, the setup for Siege is that supposedly on Doom World, there is a giant wall that I think is supposed to be like 250 feet high or something to that effect, that encircles what I'm going to refer to as the equator. I don't know if that's accurate, but encircles Doom World and separates the northern territories from the southern. And I guess supposedly it feels like there's supposed to be a sense that the northern territories are the more civilized ones, whereas the southern territories are where like all of the really messed up species are. So there's references to a Pym species of undead ant men or ant people.
Horrifying.
Right. And maybe some kind of mutated versions of Ultron robots or something. A little hard to tell. And I suspect that with some of these, there's an additional context you get from some of these Marvel Secret Wars Battle World tie-in books if you read at least, with the books that are singular characters, there's definitely more context maybe if you were reading the ongoing or read a certain arc of an ongoing that it references. I think it's even tougher for me at least to hook into these ones that are retellings of events that happened in the Marvel Universe. So, and of course, I didn't read the original Siege, but But the creative team on this is Kieran Gillen and Felipe Andrade on art, Rochelle Rosenberg on colors.
I think Rochelle Rosenberg needs a big shout out for this book because the colors of this book are amazing.
Yeah, and they kind of have to be because Andrade's art style is very abstract.
It's interesting.
Almost. No, not leaning so far as to be impressionist, but very abstract, and it's one of those art styles. I feel like this art style was really had its strongest following or injection into the mainline comics in the 80s with I cannot remember his name, but I want to say the writer he was paired up with was Chris Sienkiewicz on New Mutants. Like in the original New Mutants run in the 80s, where it was just, and I sometimes have a problem with this art style because if it's too abstract, I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? And it gets tough to follow. One thing I can say is abstract is very neat when it's a very artsy book, right? But if it's heavy in combat, and a lot of that combat is choreographed, I really lose it.
I just think that first two-page spread in Siege is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. It is. It's very neat. And again, this art style got another resurgence last year. In 2014 with the Thor: God of Thunder books that had like the God Killer in it, and I think that guy's name is Esad Ribic or Ribic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they won an Eisner, but they were definitely, critically acclaimed for that book. And so that art style is kind of seeing a resurgence, particularly in Marvel. So this book kind of tells the story of Abigail Brand, and a lot of these characters, again, the name Abigail Brand is familiar. I'm not super up on what her backstory is in the Marvel Universe. But basically what it purports is that because she so frequently rebelled against the will of Doom in this alternate history that Stephen Strange has concocted, that she was sentenced to be a shield maiden and to essentially be the commander of the defense forces that stood on the wall. So there's heavy, I feel like, references or channeling of Game of Thrones in this book, because there's this whole core of characters that stands guard on this wall. So there's some kind of neat mechanisms in here. So there's a core of clones that forms kind of the primary defense force, I would say, called the Endless Summers, which are a bunch of Scott Summers clones. So, which is what's kind of neat to see, because I'm accustomed, and I'm probably one of the few fans of and proponents of Scott Summers. But he's typically, some type of, leader figure. And I think there's a Major Summers or Colonel Summers that's the head of these clones. But at the end of the day, it's essentially very much like the Boba Fett clones in the Star Wars prequels. So there's that. There's lots of references to a few characters I don't recognize here, but Ben Grimm shows up in the book. And,
wearing tidy whities.
Yes. Obviously giving us, of course, the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out is a Fox property, and Marvel's not really trying to help them. But I thought it was very kind of definitely on the nose when the big thing in the movie is that Ben Grimm wears no pants.
Right.
It's Ben Grimm in tidy whitey underpants. So he shows up, and he's apparently stylized a little differently in terms of his power set, because he actually rises up out of the rock that they're standing on, and then is apparently able to kind of use powers like the mutant avalanche and actually move earth and rock in a similar fashion to avalanche. So good looking art, pretty strong story, and at the end of the book, one of the thematic devices in this book is that there is always a second in command to Abigail Brand on the wall, and apparently that particular position, if you will, rotates frequently during the time that Abigail has been the commander. So her current shield maiden, second in command, I can't remember her name, but is rotating to a new assignment, and so Kang shows up to be her new second in command. And other than the fact that she feels like he's a complete moron, at the end of the book, another Kang from another timeline time shifts in as the King that just showed up to be her second in command is dying. And this Kang from an alternate timeline tells her that the shield wall will fall in 20 days. So that, I feel like that's like the ticking time bomb that's starting the clock to the climax of Secret Worlds Battle World, or at least one of those two threads. And I guess this is going to be a weekly shipping book. So I don't know if they mean that it's going to run for 20 issues or.
Oh God. Who knows? I feel like maybe they'll skip a few days each book.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
There's something that they say at the end of this book where, the person that's evaporating just says Thanos dooms us all, and Kang goes, "Who's this Thanos?" and it's like what happened in the Ant-Man annual this week, where who was it? Like somebody, is it Ant-Man annual? Someone comes in, or I'm not sure. Someone comes in and they see the current lineup of Avengers. Or no, it's Eggman or Egghead. Ant-Man's arch nemesis, Eggman. He designed the AI Avengers, and they're all like, they look like the old back in like the 70s Avengers, and they're like, wait, these aren't the Avengers. I mean, Thor's a man. The Captain America's white. These aren't the Avengers. These aren't going to fool anybody. And I love that kind of tongue in cheek
Yeah.
that they throw into these books.
So overall, a good comic. The art, man, it's so hard to slot that art. It's definitely good talent, right? Good work. It didn't resonate with me as much. In the book it's a lot of talking heads, right? It's there's not a lot of combat in it. It's kind of a big kind of winding the clock to kind of get moving in a certain direction. So it's got potential, but it didn't necessarily strike me. I give it kudos for that ending though, with Kang popping up, and oh crap, what happens when you inject a time traveling character into a world that has a completely falsified history, that was created by a spell, woven by Stephen Strange. Could Kang break the rules of that reality?
You'd think he'd be able to, but
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So, one of the things you mentioned when you were going through Korvac Saga was the cameos of a bunch of characters who I normally associate with the Defenders. But then you read another book that actually kind of featured them maybe more prominently. So why don't you talk us through that one?
Yeah, so this isn't the Defenders that you would think of, and I need to actually get to the very end of the book. Who wrote it? It's Al Ewing, and you got Alan Davis, Mark Farmer, and Will Quintana on art. And the Defenders lineup, I actually like. There's a few really interesting ones because you've got, of course, Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, and she's a Thor, but she doesn't look like a Thor, which I found kind of weird because like when Groot was a Thor, he had like the Thor wings, and he kind of made himself look like a Thor, but that could just be Groot. But Jennifer Walters, she's She-Hulk, but she has a gavel on her hip, like her judge's gavel, and the gavel has the mark of Odin, the Odinborn on it.
That's awesome. I always love when they inject, the legal stuff with She-Hulk, and especially when she appears with Daredevil. So that's awesome that they kind of found a way to hook that in.
Yeah, and the other members are Rescue, which, is the female Iron Man, White Tiger. You've got Prowler, who has taken the identity of Spider-Man. Like, I guess Spider-Man had died somehow, and Prowler had, said he was gonna take up his cause, and so you've got Prowler wearing a Spider-Man like cloak, like a red webbed cloak, but he still looks like Prowler. Like, it's kind of cool. And then you've got Captain Britain, of course, which isn't the Captain Britain, it's not a Braddock. It's what's her name, Dr. Yamira. Let's see, Dr. Faiza Hussein, who is the current owner of the sword Excalibur. And I'll just run through a few of the interesting points of this comic, because this was a really crazy comic, but it was really awesome. So it starts off with a years ago, like a flashback, which, like you were saying, it's kind of strange with Kang because he's the master of time. Well, apparently this realm does have time because they have a years ago flashback at the start of this comic. And this is the iconic scene where Dr. Jensen and Tony Stark are in the cave, and
which is, as you're going through, I just want to mention is the way a lot of these Marvel tie-ins are kicking off.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Many of them start with like 10 years ago. Like Siege started with it, and I think it's. I don't want to say it's required, but I think a lot of them are doing it because the setup for these books is steeped in whatever this false history is that Strange put in for them. So. Okay.
Well, this history is very interesting because if you're a big fan of Iron Man 1, you will notice the opening scene of this book very fondly. It's Jensen and Tony Stark in the cave. But in this version of history, Tony Stark decides that he wants Jensen to be in the suit because he's got, a daughter and a mother, and Tony's feeling guilty of his weapon designs and stuff. And so he makes Yinsen escape in the suit, and he does the distract. And he, when Yinsen runs down the hall with the gun to get the distraction so that Tony can get out, it's the reverse here. Yinsen's in the suit. And so Yinsen becomes the Baron of his own Battle World domain here. And he basically designs his own Iron Man suit, which he calls Rescue. And for everyone that knows Rescue, that is, the female Iron Man suit that Tony created for Pepper. Well, Yinsen created a rescue suit for himself and for his daughter. And he's also kind of the leader of the Defenders as well as a Baron. And so, you get to see that origin. You get to see the origin of how Prowler, takes up Spider-Man's cause. You get to see that the female rescue is Yinsen's daughter. And then all of a sudden you see Dr. Faiza Hussein running at the shield wall of, their domain, and she smashes it open with Excalibur. And kind of like we were talking about earlier, like with the whole Thanos thing or, the Avengers thing, she says, "I'm Captain Britain." And they're like, "Britain? What's Britain?" She's like, "I don't know, but it's somewhere and I'm named after it." And she says, "I've got the sword Excalibur. I dream about the sword. I have these weird memories that I don't understand." She dreams of the last Captain Britain, which is Brian Braddock.
Okay.
And, he told her, to help save the world. And she's like, I don't know what it means, but it was real and it happened. And she's, that's heresy in Doom World.
Right.
To say that something happened before. And so she's like hell bent on trying to figure this out. And she kind of convinces the Defenders, to believe in her heresy, to try and help her uncover these dreams that she's having and stuff. And all, Jennifer Walters, eventually she's just like, well, maybe you're not wrong. Maybe, if that makes us criminal, whatever, we'll be criminals together. And then all of a sudden Doom appears and he just says, "That's your wish. So be it." And he basically commands Mondo City, who is the neighbor of Yinsen City, to attack Yinsen City. And so in the end of this, tanks roll in and Emma Frost and Magna Conte come through the hole in a tank and capture this new Captain Britain and basically start interrogating her. And that's how it ends. Like, you see a giant building with a Punisher symbol on it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like at some point it'll connect maybe to what's going on in the Siege comic as well.
Yeah, a lot of these things are connecting. They're not like required reading.
Right.
But yeah, like they all have to do with one another. Like there's a lot of politics involving all the other clans. I don't know. It's really interesting. Like the Siege stuff was cool because, like you get the Marvel Zombies versus Age of Ultron comic where you get to see beyond the wall.
Right.
You got a nihilist down there and everything as well. It's going to be horrible when that wall falls.
Cool.
But yeah, I think Captain Britain and the Mighty Defenders was my book of the week because I loved kind of the twist on the history, and I loved I don't know, they just did a lot of really neat things. Like I liked Prowler. Prowler was a Spider-Man villain, kind of. He wasn't like arch enemy villain, but he was a pain in Spider-Man's backside, but in this version, he kind of took up Spider-Man's cause and became Spider Hero, is what he called himself.
That's cool. Very good to hear that that's your that was the best thing you read this week.
It's not just because I've defected from the U.S. and I'm now living in the EU.
No, I always like to hear the cast put out what was the best thing that I read this week. I think that's an important thing to kind of reviewing comics is a bit of a twisty road, so it's good. To me, it's good to declare, those absolutes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that forces you to make choices. So that pretty much wraps up our Marvel tie-in coverage for this week. So that pretty healthy amount of Marvel. So we definitely had a section of the show last week where we covered a lot of the Marvel tie-ins, and it seems like on the Geeks with Wives staff and on the cast of this show, that is something that people are hooking into more so than Convergence and those tie-ins. So
yeah, definitely
kind of an interesting dynamic to see. So let's swing over to our DC coverage, which this week will pretty much just be me. So
I flipped through them. I can understand them a little bit.
All right. Well, I'm gonna burn through them really quick because we're closing up on an hour here.
Yeah.
So first thing I read was Martian Manhunter number 2. Creative team on this is Rob Williams on story, Eddie Barrows on pencils, and Eder Ferreira on inks, and Gabe Altieb on colors. I have to say, and again, I'm not like I was when I was a kid in high school where, when you threw one of these names out, I'd be like, oh, well, that was the guy on blah, blah, blah. Like, I have no idea who a lot of these people are. Other than Gabe Altieb, I'm familiar with his name. I can't recall in my head any of his work. But this book, but it was tough for me to kind of swallow where I wound up with this book because, if you're familiar with kind of my stances on stuff, in my stock answer to who is your favorite character in the DC universe, Martian Manhunter is it, and Aquaman is my second. Followed by a lot of the other kind of second tier characters. So there's a few interesting things in this book. Number one, this is part of the DC. I'll call it a reboot, maybe a half boot is the right.
Is it DCU? Is that what they're calling?
I guess it's DCU. I'm not really absolutely certain what book is a DCU book and what book isn't. I know that there's a schism within the DC universe, and it's New 52. Some of the New 52 books are continuing, and then there's this other set of books that got rebooted.
Yeah, because I looked at that Green Lantern Lost Army because I thought it might be like the new Green Lantern, and it wasn't. It was like the old 52 stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to read that.
Right. All right. So this is one of the books that's part of the half boot, and what they're doing in this book is they are, I think what they're going to be doing is kind of monkeying with what we historically think of as Gian Jones, the Martian Manhunter. There are allusions to the fact that the origin which he is told and which he has believed was maybe somehow injected into his memory, that there's a little bit of a kind of a total recall set up in here, and that what he thought he was, being the last Martian may not be true. There is a character in Dubai named Pearl who is on the run from some other aliens, and that's kind of going on in a secondary sequence. She apparently has a telepathic link with Gian, and he's talking to her and guiding her through her escape from these aliens that are chasing her. It makes me feel like whatever it is they're going to say the Martian Manhunter is now, whether he's a Martian or some other race, she is apparently another member of that race, seems like. So that's one of the storylines. Another one of the storylines is that that Martian Manhunter was somehow manipulated. There was a series of terrorist acts that occurred on the planet that seemed to all be coordinated and synchronized. And Gian's claim is that the terrorists somehow used him to plan it and maybe to coordinate it. And so he is establishing contact with someone that he knows in NASA, and is attempting to use one of the machines essentially to kill himself. So Superman shows up. This is the T-shirt and jeans Superman
the greaser.
who I guess. So even though this is I'll say it's a DCU book, I guess, but Superman is continuing in the New 52 continuity, but this Superman who shows up looks like the Superman in the New 52 continuity, who is going through this arc where his secret identity is being revealed. And there's a scene in this month's issue of Superman, or maybe it was last month's issue, of him riding on the tail section of an airplane, again in the same kind of costume with the T-shirt and jeans. So that's the Superman who shows up, gets into a fight with Gian, who just completely kind of monsters up to take Superman on. It's kind of funny. One of the endearing scenes is Superman says, "I will not allow you to do this," and that's like the last word bubble on a page. And as I'm about to flip the page, I'm like, I don't know that he should have said that to Martian Manhunter. And of course, as I predicted, on the very next page, he's like, "You will not allow me to do, you presumptuous," So anyway, yeah. So there's a Martian Manhunter Superman fight, and that's good, because one of the concerns I had when I saw the cover, which is also of them fighting, I was like, this better not be a bait and switch, because every once in a while you get so many of these comics that depict something on the cover, and then you open them up and what's on the cover doesn't actually happen in the book.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you. I'm not sure if you know. I really probably need to swing back around and ask Brad Bell. So then other members of the Justice League show up: Wonder Woman, Flash, and Cyborg. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Wonder Woman's getup. I have not.
She's got blades, man.
Well, yeah, and it's a full suit, right? So she's got thigh-high boots, in pants, full leggings anyway. The rest of the costume has all skin covered, which is fine. It's an okay look. Not one of my favorite Wonder Woman costumes that I've ever seen. And I am a fan. I have a preference for her being showing a little less skin, because I think not because of the skin, but because I find when there's more detailed costumes on her that she comes off looking a lot better.
Right. I think that's what they're going for. I think they're going for a little less Zenoscope and a little more like woman power. So, she doesn't have the double Ds or the thighs being shown. Now she's got like armor, and I don't know. She kind of looks badass, but I don't know. She's got blades on her wrists and
I did like that. So, and then the last side story is this misshapen, kind of malformed, other really strange character who is going through what I will call New York. But I guess maybe there's not a real New York in DC, so maybe it's Metropolis. But wherever he is, he has been befriended by two young children. So it kind of has like an E.T. feel to it. And I get the sense that whatever this thing is, that is the race that Gian Jones is actually a part of. Again, I can't tell if he's saying that Gian is a Martian or something else, but it's a completely weird, like really creepy character who I don't think is evil, but just talks very cryptically. Not quite like Yoda, but it's definitely gives you the creeps. So, but at any rate, back to the Martian Manhunter thread. So there's this big knockdown, drag-out fight between Gian and Superman, and then he kind of knocks Superman out and then takes on these other members of the League. And then when Superman comes to, he realizes that they weren't ever really fighting Gian. John injected that set of imagery into their head using his telepathy. And in the meantime, he's actually been getting this machine started. And the big shocker at the end is he apparently actually kills himself. So, but of course, this is a reboot. So we're pretty certain he hasn't actually disintegrated himself. So I had problems with this book, and that's, I think, one of the biggest ones is they use a very shocking mechanism in the close of the book in a setup that immediately nullifies it. Like, if you had done like a 19-issue run of this, and no Martian Manhunter ongoing series has really stuck for a while. He just doesn't get the sales numbers. If you had done like a 18 or 19 issue run and then had him do that, I'd have ended the book with my mouth open, right? But
well, see, here's the thing you might have missed, and I caught this flipping through because I flipped through this comic because I knew you were going to talk about it. The doctor that he's talking to says that 94% of any object she places in it gets annihilated. And so there's a 6% chance that he's going to wind up somewhere else in the galaxy. Right. I mean,
but that's what I figured. I figured he hasn't killed himself, but he's going to wind up somewhere else. It is interesting that you called that out, though, because I read it, but I didn't think about it when I read the part at the end. I guess the possibility that also means is, given that he's a shapeshifter, is that if even 6% of him survives, is that still him, kind of in a group kind of like thing?
Well, here's where I'm going to bring you here. And this is just a question, because you've read the book. I like I said, I only read just like tidbits of it.
Right.
Do you think that Mr. Biscuit's kind of misshapen alien, do you think that's John after he's gone through the portal and that's what we're seeing? Or did you feel like that was on the same timeline as the Manhunter?
I thought it was, but the way you described it, it's definitely a possibility. It's definitely that it's going to be kind of a multi-threaded set of timelines that we're looking at.
Because it could have scrambled his brain a little, and that's why he's like, I need the cookies, like that weird stuff.
Yeah. But I guess, my feeling about this book overall is Martian Manhunter is such an alien to begin with that the stories that are my favorites and the things I cling to and the things that really endear him to me as a character is when he's being John Jones. I love that shtick of him in human form being a private investigator decked out with the complete stereotypical trench coat and top hat. I love those stories, and I feel like he's such an alien that shtick works so well when you ground him in almost the mundane, and then juxtapose that with him then leaping into alien form and throwing down some superpower kind of stuff. So this book, I feel like it's almost more expected that you would take this kind of character and inject him into a story like we're seeing, which is just completely confusing and all over the place and very alien. So we'll see how it goes. But the unusual thing for me is this is a Martian Manhunter story that I'm not immediately clinging to. And so to wrap up our show this evening, I'm going to quickly run through, I say quickly, but through Robin, Son of Batman. Now this, again, I didn't complete reading my stack, but I will say so far out of the 3 books I have read, this to me is the best thing that I've read this week, which again is very surprising. I know Brad Bell is high on this series. I cannot stand the character of Damian Wayne.
I hate him. I'm with you. When you guys were talking about that the first episode, I was like, I hate Damian.
Yeah, I'm the same way. He's just a little snot-nosed.
Oh, he's a little shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I have not been able to stand him. And I will say, this chapter, there's a couple things that they're doing with this book, and that is that they're I guess time shifting him or age shifting him a little bit. This to me, and I don't know if I have this right, but is an older rendition of Damian. He appears to kind of be I think he's about 14. And the big thing here is that I think he's at the point now where he is recognizing that there's a lot of jacked up stuff that he's done, and he's definitely on the path attempting to achieve redemption. So, again, unfortunately, I have a few sockets that if you plug them in nerd content, you kind of get an automatic buy, and one of those is because I'm in love with the series Angel, and that is that whole story of somebody who's done horrible things attempting to achieve redemption. This story immediately clicked with me. So the creative team is Patrick Gleason on story and pencils, and Mick Gray on inks, and John Kelly's and Jerome Cox on colors. I did a review on this, and one thing I'll say about colors is I think there's a definitive split. I think I picked up on it that Khalees did maybe the first kind of 18 to 20 pages maybe, and then the remainder are done by Jerome Cox. And Khalees's art style, this story takes place in South America, and Khalees definitely kind of channeled that kind of Hispanic heritage kind of color scheme. It feels a lot like I can't remember exactly what the term is, but what's the term for Mexican wrestlers?
Oh, Lucha Libre?
Lucha Libre. Yeah, it kind of has that feel to it color-wise.
Luchadors.
Luchadores, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew. I wanted to say Nacho Libre, but I knew that wasn't, I knew that wasn't right. But when you get to the back of the book, the color scheme is very much more like a Batman comic. The colors are a little flatter. It definitely channels, kind of the shadowy elements of a Batman story, and I liked that feel better. I may not have pegged that right exactly on how the colors broke down the work, but that's what it felt like. Art-wise, again, because the story is starting to engage me a little bit more with the character of Damian, for some reason, this issue, I decided that I like the cloak. The Robin cape, the version of the Robin cape that Damian wears is black, but it has gold trim, and it actually has a hoodie on it, which when I've seen him in that before, I've been like, get out of here with that on. Like, get off my lawn. But I actually really like it this time, and maybe now it's because I've you and I both are becoming big fans of Arrow, and
yeah, could be.
And so at any rate, I like seeing him with the cloak on, but again, this story is about him attempting to achieve redemption. He has, I don't know what the origin of this creature who has become his sidekick, who he calls Goliath. But it definitely feels a little like the Miss Marvel arc that they were running when that comic ended in Marvel, unfortunately, where she had Lockjaw as her sidekick. It's very similar, although what I mentioned in my reviews, what I hope starts to happen with this book is that the one transition I feel like they haven't made is Damian is still very cold and very still all business. In a different way than Bruce Wayne is, where with Bruce's coldness, you get it, but that's a matter of sealing himself off. He still cares about humanity, whereas where they haven't taken Damian yet is I don't think that he gets that his path to redemption is going to inherently involve him appreciating people and humanity more. To me, he's still approaching it like a math problem. Like it's, hey, I did this thing and it was bad, so to correct it, I have to, I have to change the sign of that equation, right, and reset it back to zero. But it's very still mission oriented, and so this book closes out, and this sets it up for maybe the next point of interest. Or area of interest that it's going to head into, with him gaining, I won't call it a sidekick, I'll say a partner. And I don't know this character's backstory, but there is I guess a superhero in this book referred to as Nobody, who apparently comes from this area of South America and wound up taking up this mantle because of some things that Damian did when he was being trained to be in the League of Assassins. So the book closes out with her saying that I'm not absolutely certain that I buy into the fact that you are seeking redemption and that you're going to be good now, but I'm going to be your partner now and stick by your side and oversee what you're doing. So just to make sure that if that's not your plan, that's what you're going to wind up doing anyway. So again, I really came away liking this book, and I really kind of surprised myself because, again, the character, I was interested to check in on him and kind of see where they were taking his story now that he's returned from the dead. But I didn't expect to end this book liking it as much as I did.
Go read some Injustice. You'll hate Damian.
All right. So that is going to be a wrap for us for this week of What's Your Issue? Like I said, hopefully next week we'll have the rest of the cast back on. But if not, then Everett and I will just sit here and jam about comics again. Hopefully I'll get through my entire stack next week.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and I know you're coming back from the honeymoon festivities. So
yeah, I think there's more comics next week that I'm looking forward to. Did we want to mention any that we were looking forward to, actually?
I would if I'd finished my stack and done my pull list for this week, but I haven't. So, but by all means, go ahead and I'm interested to hear what you're picking up this week.
I'm going to look it up right now. Hopefully that's okay. I've got the list here. So let's look through DC. Is there anything interesting coming out in DC? Probably not. Injustice. I pick up Injustice every week.
Okay.
And yeah, that's all I'm going to pick up. Cyborg #1 comes out. That might be interesting because he looks. Be a big deal. Yeah, he looks like he's kind of got some like bio-organic parts to him, like kind of. I don't know. Yeah,
they've started to twist his story up in that now. Basically, he can morph a body part into any weapon that he can imagine.
Yeah, he's gonna be like Carnage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's pretty much all from DC that I'm looking for. It's kind of boring, but whatever. Let's see, Hawkeye, Guardians of the Galaxy. No, let's see. Kanan comes out. I know a lot of people are gonna be excited about that. Not me. I'm probably going to pick up Marvel Zombies #2 and Old Man Logan #3, of course.
Okay.
Punisher #20 comes out. I'll probably pick that up. And Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde #1 comes out. Definitely picking that up. Okay. That's probably going to be like I think I named 5 or 6 there. That'll probably be my initial buy.
Okay. No Star Wars books this week coming up?
It was just Kanan that I saw, but I already closed out the windows. I'm trying to get in the Rebels, so I'm not like ready to read Kanan books, but from what I hear, they're pretty terrible.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining in for tonight. Appreciate you viewing the podcast or pulling it down on iTunes or however you go about checking it out. Everett, if people wanted to follow you on Twitter or any other social media, where would they catch up with you and your stuff?
Well, you can find it right here on my bar. It's at Everett Gets It on Twitter.
Cool. And if you want to catch up with me and whatever I've got going on, check me out on Google Plus at Agasicles Stamus. So that's a wrap for tonight. Thanks a lot for joining in, and we are out of here.